The age of knowledge is dead, a cold and corrupted memory. The new age of ignorance is upon us. Mortal bodies wither and minds fade, yet the animus machine is immortal, and the God engine endures all. I remember stepping onto the cockpit of my first command like it was yesterday. I was surprised how cramped it was. The air was dry and the smell so strong of old leather, oiled metal, stale sweat. I stepped forward a little too confidently, nearly striking my head on the unload rig, not for the last time I can assure you, and lowered myself into the cracked hide of the command throne. I did my best to suppress a nervous tremor as dendrites snaked down to interface with my skull plugs, and believe this, nothing prepares you for the first time in the manifold. The vertigo, the contradiction of perspective and scale, and there at the back of your mind, the collected memories of each princeps who has each come before you. Yes, you'll feel their judgment, but you must use it, steel yourself. You owe it to your predecessors, you owe it to yourself, and above all else you owe it to your legion, and to the Titan who deigns to let you share in its glories. Now we return today again to look at another diorama, and I've only looked at a couple of these previously, both of which you'll find linked at the end of this video if you wish to refresh your memory. Now you remember that previously we looked at Mikal's diorama of the Navigator, but he recently produced a new piece of work that he's finished, and he has happily decided to collaborate with me to showcase this for you guys here today. Now, as per the Navigator, this is another awesome concept. What I loved about it straight away is that this doesn't appear to necessarily even be set within a 40k time period. It looks as if the Titan has been left for millennia, and the human inhabitants of the world have perhaps discovered this from long ago, unsure what it is or who constructed it, and unable to do anything else other than repurpose it for their own needs. It's quite a somber scene in many ways, and reminds me even a little of the famous end to Planet of the Apes, where the giant structure of the Statue of Liberty, forgotten age, leaving an imposing and tragic reminder of what once had been in the age of mankind. But as imposing and absolutely monstrous as Titans are, many are not the invincible world enders that they may appear to be. The Reaver Titan, for example, that we see here, is famously weak on its rear and side positions. Its power plant is positioned more toward the rear, making them vulnerable to attack on these sides. And while even a small Titan on the scale of Titans is massive and looks to be unstoppable, they are by their nature poorly maneuverable. They have four main arcs to the front, rear and side, and the front arc for a Titan is usually the strongest in terms of defense, because obviously this is where they expect the majority of firepower to be directed to them. While some Titan weapons can fire with a degree of sway to the side arcs, the main weapons usually can only fire forward, and that's down what is referred to as the front corridor arc. Now, the aforementioned power plant of a Titan is its plasma reactor. This is the heart of its system, and for the crew, just keeping these massive war machines operational and even moving is a huge challenge in and of itself. And again, while they can appear to be the highest technological power of mankind, it's important to remember that the Imperium did not create these giant gods of war. Titans are largely pre-Imperium from the golden age of mankind, and as such it's reasonable to assume that the operators and maintainers of the colossal war giants have a limited working knowledge, and we know from references that the golden age era machines had a highly advanced interface with their operators, and that AI played a large part in keeping systems operating at optimal levels. Now, in the age of the Imperium, while the princeps and their crew are able to move the giant machines, it's questionable at what level of optimal percentage they're really moving them. It's far more likely that the Mechanicus and crew of Titans in the age of the Imperium are achieving only the lowest end of what a Titan is actually capable of, and moving them around is like an old man staggering along as he's crippled by the ravages of age, and you watch on with fear that at any moment he could just collapse. And this is not an exaggeration. Titans in battle have to continually maintain optimal reactor levels, and if they push this too hard, they could easily overload the reactor, damaging the systems and core functionality of the Titan. Mechanicus law even dictates that a Titan's reactors should never be pushed beyond safe operating limits, but during battle, the rulebook is often going straight out the window. In reality, reactor pushes are a common thing for Titan crews, and they will know themselves what their god of war is truly capable of tolerating. What helps Titans survive their weaknesses are what are known as void shields. Now, Titan is fitted with a bank of void shield generators, which are near to impenetrable, and some of the most powerful defenses that the Imperium utilizes. Their functionality, however, is again poorly understood, as is much in the Imperium. Essentially, though, a void shield just displaces incoming energy into the void, or what is known as the Materium, the warp. It's not truly clear what occurs, whether it's using warp power to neutralize incoming weapons, or if it somehow redirects them into the warp. But regardless, they are immensely powerful at preventing incoming fire. Sustained fire, however, will cause a void shield generator to overload, leading a shield to then potentially collapse. It will then need time to recover before being reactivated, and this is why Titans carry a bank of void shield generators, not just one. However, while this is more than enough to negate all but the most powerful ground assaults, sustained fire between Titans themselves can be enough to cause multiple generators to fail, and then a Titan's shields to collapse, with obviously negative consequences. As powerful as they are at negating ranged fire, void shields do not protect against physical close quarter assault, and this is one of the biggest dangers for any large machine, be it a knight or a warlord Titan. Now, as before, Michael gave me his own thoughts and insight on the concept and process of building the miniature. The painting process was an exercise in weathering, and the model has a lot of rust and patina and dirt to make it really look weather beaten and aged. The Titan is painted with yellows and blues, and whereas the structure it's built upon, as well as the jetty for the boat, are red to help separate the eras visually. The rear of the Titan is bleached out as it would suffer continual wind and spray from the sea, and as per the navigator, the most difficult element here was the water and making the waves convincing. This is something that Michael wants to continue to practice in the future, and making natural looking water is extremely difficult because of the nature of the material, and here he used Vallejo water effect with a gloss varnish. Now, the narrative for the Titan lighthouse came from his own love of lighthouses, these tall, lonely bastions against the ferocious oceans that will batter them under a sustained assault by natural forces. He wanted this to be such a structure, and that it would carry a beacon, not simply a light, but a physical beacon that must be lit. And when the Adeptus Titanica range launched, Michael wanted to use one of these to build this concept. He wanted to use scaled figures as well, and as Games Workshop don't have scaled human figures for the Titanicus range, he used Z-scale model railway figures, and these are not perfect for scale, but they're just about close enough. The most important thing is that they give a sense of scale to the model, and this is often an issue with the Titanicus scale of miniatures and epic before it. Even something like Battlefleet Gothic, because they do look excellent as models, but without a sense of scale, the powerful and imposing presence they have is somewhat lost. So Michael very wisely included these human figures for scale, and as I said, I also love that by using the railway figures, it's not entirely clear if this is still the age of the Imperium or some distant future where humanity leaves the Imperium behind. The sense of mystery was very much something that he wanted to include with the diorama, and I think this absolutely works. He says that he loved the first season of the TV show Lost, and I have to agree that whilst ultimately it was a poor show that I abandoned long before the end, that first season was pretty interesting, with the mystery and strange things being found, what exactly was happening there on the island and discovering things. I think I could give my own personal example for something like this. It would be a video game like classic Myst or Riven, where you're stranded on a strange island and you've got to discover the machinery, how it works, what's its purpose, the things that are there around you with, no real knowledge other than just literally what you can see. So Michael agreed that this Lost show collapsed when they began trying to basically explain things, and this is why he wanted to keep the air of mystery, that it's not over-explained. His personal interpretation is that a starship is damaged somehow, and that only one of the crew survives the escape to the planet. The land is uninhabited as far as this survivor can tell, but while exploring, he notes that this huge structure is there far in the distance. He continues toward it curiously, and as he draws near, it becomes clear that this giant monstrosity is some kind of mechanical engine, a machine, perhaps a robot of some kind. The survivor decides that this must be some ancient or highly advanced race, and decides that because there's a little shelter elsewhere around, he's going to live in the relative protection of this ancient machine, the boathouse, the little jetty, and he wants to use the boat to explore the surrounding region for survivors or settlements. He speculates that the beacon is also created by previous inhabitants of this area, and he isn't sure if the beacon is designed to attract people or to keep them away, and for that reason he's hesitant to immediately light it, not knowing entirely what the results could be. Mikal later decided to add a second figure nearer the base because it added more depth and perspective to the scene. However, he felt that this clashed with his narrative of a lone survivor, but he feels that you could adapt it, that there were two survivors, or maybe somehow this is another stranded figure who discovered each other here and are helping one another to survive. But the origin of the machine regardless remains a mystery to the two figures we see here, and even if there was a settlement of humans somewhere nearby or on the planet at all, perhaps they had once lived in this area but have then long since abandoned it. Either way, the planet is clearly isolated or abandoned by wider human civilization. Perhaps it's a forgotten world that the Imperium once deemed important but lost use for. Maybe the human survivors here were forgotten during a planetary-wide evacuation and were left behind and now have to survive by their own hands. The planet itself is unaware of anything else going on in the galaxy, and as I said initially, perhaps this is the distant future in a post-Imperium age, and the Titan is a lost remnant from the age of endless galactic war. While Titans are behemoth warhulks that march across planets bringing apocalyptic devastation to the enemies of humanity, their visual presence should always be tempered by remembering that they are far from invincible. They are ancient, slow, and fragile. Their void shields protect their weaknesses, but if this can be breached, subsequent damage can be easily fatal. And for the crew itself, they play an uncomfortably stressful game of balancing as they attempt to continually fight against the machine spirit of the Titan itself, as well as attempting to prevent all systems from overloading, pushing and pulling power between systems, transferring it from the core only as necessary, sometimes in dire situations pushing power far beyond acceptable limits to gain an edge, but paying for it in weaknesses elsewhere. Sometimes this may even require them to pull power from their void shields, exposing them to high risks of shield collapse, but this is the game that all Titan crews play. An Imperial force wielding even a single Titan can still be enough to deter enemies from starting an engagement at all. But should the Loyalist Mechanicus and Imperium forces encounter ancient Dark Titans or comparable Xenos machines of war, now that is an entirely different battle engagement. Now this was once again a really fantastic conversion, and I really enjoyed watching it develop through Mikal's Twitter feed, and you can find both this and his Instagram link below the video in the notes section, and I recommend that you check it out. I enjoyed especially the change up of scale in this piece. Previously we had what was a fairly standard scale conversion of an Imperial Navigator, but this was an entirely different scene with a very interesting background, and I'll be putting together some more videos as well to do with the miniature side of the hobby very soon. I have a variety of things coming up to get involved in, as well as some live streaming of model making, tying some of it in with the lore, and you'll see what's coming up very, very soon. So I just finished saying thanks to you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed another look at an awesome conversion. As per usual, if you enjoy, please hit the like, it helps me out, helps support the channel, and then I'll also know to put together more diorama and more mini focused videos in the future. So with that, I'll see you in the next one.